Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Bob Pompeani. A lot to get into, including Pitt, which controls its destiny, has a chance to wrap up an ACC Coastal and head to their championship game. We'll get into that a bit later. But the #1 and the #2 and likely the #3 topics tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Steelers and the 16-16 tie we saw today. And here is your panel. Joining us tonight, Mark Kaboly, still in Heinz Field under the lights from The Athletic, does a great job covering the Steelers. Below him is Chris Mueller, co-host of the PM Team every day 2 to 6 on 93.7 The Fan. And across from him, Will Graves, who does great work with the Associated Press. All right, there are so many ways to start this thing, but I want to get into just an overall evaluation of Mason Rudolph first. And I don't want to get into some of the things that happened in this game because they're separate topics here, guys. But Will Graves, start with you. Overall, given the fact he found out last night that he was going to start Ben Roethlisberger in COVID, how do you think he played?
Not very well against a team that is really one of the worst teams in the league for a reason. I mean, I think this was a chance for him to show what the post-Ben era looked like. And to be honest with you, he just didn't do it for me. I mean, it was, and I like Mason, but this is the guy, it's not like he's that raw. He practices with the first team every Wednesday. And this week he practiced with the first team Wednesday and Thursday. So it's not like he was thrown to the wolves. And he talked about how much more comfortable he was than he's been, but I didn't see a step forward from him. And really, I think that's what the Steelers wanted to see. And if I'm looking towards 2022, alarm bells are going off.
Well, I think what really was alarming to me, guys, was that he looked comfortable for one series of the game where presumably they had a nice little script that they had laid out with all the stuff he liked the best. He even bobbled that initial snap, one of many bad snaps from Kendrick Green. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. A guy wearing 53 who can't snap the ball for the Steelers. But he bobbled that initial bad snap. He gathered himself, he did that little shoulder fake, and then he made a nice throw. I'm thinking, okay, maybe Mason Rudolph is really more comfortable. But, Will, I agree with you. He was really bad. I thought he threw a really bad ball pretty much all game long. The one time he needed to float one in there, he decided to try to rifle one to Deontay Johnson. Just very few good throws. I don't think the game plan after that initial drive helped him out. He just looked like a guy that was thrown to a spot and praying that a receiver was going to be there. That's not really how you can play in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't think he played as well as we saw him last on the field in Cleveland week 17. He was a little bit confident in that game that really a lot of people thought was something we could look forward to in future seasons of how he might play. But, he just seemed out of whack. I mean, he didn't know where to throw the ball to. You have to make plays in the red zone like he did on the first series. That throw to Ray McLeod is just totally unacceptable. However, I do believe it was a tough situation to put in. I think it was a tougher situation than him, say, Roethlisberger getting hurt on the first play of the game. He had very limited chance to get ready for this game. There's a different scheme that Roethlisberger is comfortable with than what Mason Rudolph is comfortable with, and I think the coaching staff failed miserably in trying to make Mason Rudolph succeed here. You don't throw the ball 52 times. You don't throw the ball 32 out of the first 45 plays of the game with a guy like Mason Rudolph. So I think that was a big part of it too.
Yeah, I want to dovetail on that point because that's one of the biggest takeaways for me. Chris, we'll go to you on this one because when you have 50-some throws versus 30 rushes, and only once this year has Ben Roethlisberger eclipsed that 50-pass mark. That doesn't make sense on a day like today against this team, which is one of the worst in run defense in this weather with a guy who found out last night he was starting. I thought that, and it really showed itself. 16-10, first and goal from the 5, and they threw the ball 3 straight times.
Yeah, I thought their situational play calling was just an atrocity. Did they not think that they could get any sort of push in that goal-to-go situation? I thought that was horrible. That was inexcusable. Maybe that 52 dropbacks, that attempts number looks a little lower if they're not trying to press at the end of the game with a couple final throws, but he's still in the mid-40s either way. I didn't understand it. Listen, Najee Harris was not the best running back in this game. Pretty much anybody that got the ball for Detroit for the majority of the afternoon looked more effective because they were gashing the Steelers left and right. But he still topped 100 yards on only 26 carries. It wasn't like he was doing 2.5 yards in a cloud of dust. He was getting positive yardage. I was just completely flummoxed like everybody else by the game plan. I didn't think it put Rudolph in a position to show what he could do, and it got very frustrating. I don't know about you guys, Will and Mark. It was getting frustrating to watch him continually try to throw the deep ball to James Washington for either the Joe Flacco offense of let's hope for PI like they got on the first series, or that James Washington or Deontay Johnson is going to make a combat catch. This is the NFL. You're not going to get that play to work that often, and I thought that was just a sign of how out of sorts he and they were.
Well, I mean, I think a couple of times on those, he thought there was going to be an offsides call, so he thought he had a free play. I know at least twice he was arguing with the officials. Chris, I kind of go against it. What I didn't like is what have I seen Mason Rudolph do on that field? What makes him different than Ben is that he can throw the ball 50, 55 yards down the field. I didn't like the quick hitter stuff. I mean, he obviously looked so out of sorts doing that. I mean, and I asked him about that specifically after the game. I mean, that little slant to Deontay Johnson in the fourth quarter when he threw a fastball when a changeup would have done. I would have liked to see more intermediate to deep throws, to be honest with you, to make the game plan different than what they were going to do if Ben was in the game, because he can do things that Ben can't do physically. So, that being said, there also wasn't a lot of separation, right? I mean, like, that's the other side of this coin here. Chris is right. There were too many combat catches. They weren't schemed to where they were open. They weren't open. So that's another factor. But then Deontay Johnson's after the game saying, well, I didn't get the ball thrown my way that much. Well, when you got the ball thrown your way at the end of the game, what'd you do? You fumbled it. So, like, it was just a bizarre, weird, gross game, and I'm just glad it's over.
You know what I don't understand is I'll go back to the running game once again. How did they win the past 4 weeks? They ran the ball. I don't care if there were 7, 8 people in the box. They say they're a physical team. They were going to push people out of the way, and eventually over the past 4 weeks, it worked. Here, they just figure, there's 6 people in the box. We can't run. Let's throw the ball. And you're throwing at the ball to Ray McDonald and Steven Sims and Deontay Johnson or whoever. I mean, it's just not going to work. I really didn't like how they came out and threw the ball as much as they can. You have to impose your will. I don't care if Trey Turner's out. I don't care if the other guard, Kevin Dodson's out. You got to run the ball because that is your identity that has been shown week after week after week after week. And they went away for when they should have actually doubled down on it. That's why they lost or tied.
All right, we're going to take a break on that note. When we come back, we're going to talk about the defense's role in this tie, which feels like a loss. I don't know, I keep wanting to say loss, but it's a tie. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about something interesting that Joe Schobert said after the game in the post-game press conference. That's next, right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. The #1 Cochran Sports Showdown is brought to you by #1 Cochran, Go One Better, and by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.